I'm giving the floor, the virtual floor to Natasa Milic-Frayling from Untitled Chapter to talk about taking access to the next level, legacy software hosting and remote use of archived content. Natasa, please.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to present to you today on the issue of access to digital content, because that has been kind of my preoccupation for several years now. My name is Natasa Milic-Frayling, and I am CEO and founder of Untitled Digital. I have been involved with preservation issues for a while now, primarily through planets and scale projects at the beginning, and now with the UNESCO. So today I will tell you more about what we have done in order to ensure that digital archives records can be accessed. Importance of digital archives is extremely high because of the transfer knowledge function that they have across time. And we know that the value of the archives really is in providing the right information to the right people at the right time. And now in the times of this pandemic, so that people are seeking for ways to find the most effective vaccine or medication. This is about understanding what happened in the past and how we can use the past records to innovate in the future. And I'm using this bioanalysis example just to illustrate to you how part of the industry that are really, really keen on access to digital records, how they manage it. In bioanalysis, normally people have instruments, very sophisticated instruments that they use to process a specimen, and then the raw data from these instruments get moved to specialist applications. The specialist applications provide data analysis, and all of that together goes into a digital archive that stores full information about a study that has been completed. Now, this information has to be accessible and verifiable at any point in time, which means that archive is continuously accessed, and there's ongoing integrity checks, and most importantly, there is a check that the analysis of the data actually is stays faithful to what was done originally. So the industry itself has adopted very strict guidelines. These are called good laboratory practices, and these good laboratory practices must be followed. And then there are organizations like OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, that helps organizations interpret these principles and then put in place practices. And I'm just here highlighting two. One is about importance of having the raw data from those instruments, analysis of specimens put in the archive, and then being able to look at the data and see the same analysis. And for that, they also advise putting software and preparing software and putting in the archive if necessary to have these ongoing checks. So how does this normally work? And so the archive has raw data, preserved digital objects, metadata. They have preservation workflows. All of that is within the archive. But then there is this PC that has the software, and then the raw data is exported from the archive into the PC, and then whatever is seen on the screen at that moment, meaning the results of the analysis, need to be compared with the report that has been preserved. So this is the validation, and that's done constantly. On a monthly basis, they may be doing integrity checks, and then on a 6-month basis, they will be doing software checks. I'm mentioning this because this is an excellent example where things work brilliantly most of the time, until the time comes when it starts creating headaches and challenges. And that's the time when the operating system fails. Even if the hardware stays, when the operating system becomes unsupported, then things become much more difficult, because the operating system then causes the security threats that need to be mediated by isolating the PC. At the moment when a PC is isolated, then the files that need to be transferred from the archive into the PC, that requires physical access. So everything becomes much more difficult. And then, of course, now if you look at the rate at which operating systems are becoming unsupported, most recently Windows 7 in January 2020, it doesn't have any more even extended support. So now all the studies are being affected since 2009 to 2020 that use the software released in that period. If you look at even further back with the Windows XP, which was released in 2001, the support ended in 2014. So we now have 2 decades of studies, and these 2 decades of studies are affecting now, being affected by the obsolescence. I just want to mention, just to put this in context, we had a SARS epidemic in 2002, and the records from that time are now 18 years old. And that is the time of XP, and that is the time of Intel, chip number 4. So that was a different sort of era. The question then is, can we now, when we're struggling with COVID-19, go back to those records? Can we go and allow and enable scientists all over the world look at the data that is relevant? And fortunately, yeah, the answer is yes. And here I'm putting the implementation that actually allows that. On the right-hand side, there is what we call it a software library. This is the environment in which the software is installed in virtual machines. And this is the environment in which data needs to be brought in order for the data to be reprocessed with the original software. I'm using here a software called Analysis 1.4.2, which actually is used in bioanalysis. And then anybody can come to their PC and access the installations from their browser. And so I will now just demonstrate to you quickly how that's done, just to explain how it is possible to get the data in, even though you have to mediate a couple of risks. The XP installation has to be isolated because it's kind of vulnerable, and the data still need to reach that virtual machine effectively and easily for end users to use. So this is enters to a portal of the software library. Which then brings people to a place where they can find these virtual desktops. So I mentioned there is a desktop that I will need to transfer the data, and this desktop needs to talk to external world. Desktop, it has to be, say, on contemporary operating system that is supported, and then the desktop will take me either to a portal where repository where I may have my data, or it may take me to an archive if I have access to the repository. And then at the same time, I'm going to start a desktop. This is a desktop where I need to transfer the data to. And this is the XP environment in which actually we have the application running. So if I go here to the transfer desktop, I have 3 areas where I can put the data. Say, here's my browser. I can get out and bring the data in. There are many different methods, so I won't bother with this. Say here, I have put the data in an area which is my personal area where I can get information, say a couple of files that I wish to use in my experiments. So the same U drive now is available also here in this environment. And that's the key, because this environment here doesn't have access to the rest of the world. And here's the data that I would like to now check with my applications. I can go and say, and do a multiple analysis and do a quick like here. At that point in time, this is the file that is very old, is activating the application. The application is Analysis 1.4.2. If you're curious how old it is, we can check. So this is an installation, a release of 2004. This is 16 years old, and the data is quite old as well. If I just want to see the data, I can click a couple of links here, and the analysis is in front of me. I can do this to any file. So the point here is that with this environment, we can create software installations that can then be used for often very kind of proprietary formats of thousands of documents. So creating a software library that has this effective access is absolutely key to continuing to use the digital archive that is so carefully retained, say, by Bioanalysis sector. And just looking ahead, yes, there are many, many challenges, as Summer mentioned. And I just want to say we got very, very far, and there's still way to go. But working together, I think we will make services of this sort commonplace. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. It's really fascinating to see the work being done in this area. But apologies to Marcel, who I forgot to introduce before. So Marcel is the co-chair of this session. And Marcel, are there any questions to Natasha?
Yeah, there are questions actually. Well, there was first question: is there a paper about this wonderful work you did, Natasha?
No, have not published anything yet on the system, but we hope in the future. We're primarily focusing on practice, of course, and engineering behind, but definitely happy to share with the community and share know-how, because there are lots of intricacies involved in creating integrated environment like this.